So basically, I've started this channel kind of just obviously, at the back of my own freelance stuff and that kind of thing. Um, but also, I just kind of want to speak to people who've been there and have some, good advice to give.
Yeah,
You're obviously one of those guys. Uh,
allegedly.
yeah. So I guess for any of the 12 people watching who don't know who you are, do you want to give yourself a bit of a brief introduction?
Well, I'm Simon, as you know, one of those accidental entrepreneurs. We started off with Roy, who's co-founder at PushON in 2005. We needed to pivot what we were doing at the time, so we'd accidentally learnt some SEO. So we set up an SEO agency. Didn't know how to be an agency, but started doing SEO and paid in the early days. Slowly but surely grew the agency. We've had some of the people who've been through the business are what I'd consider some of the superstars of marketing the Northwest. You've got people like Kieran Hughes, for instance, Tom Fitton, really good, smart people who've been with us and sort of gone on to do grand things themselves. Katrina Gallagher as well. She works across so many people. What a powerhouse of a woman she is as well. And yeah, grew the business. We brought on development in the late noughties. Do a lot of Magento development now, fairly big scale stuff, and become an e-commerce consultancy. And my role within that is used to be managing director, but I don't like operations that much. So I'm business strategy director, and I also do some assistance. It's a great title. I'll never surpass this.
Go on.
I'm currently entrepreneur in residence for WeWork Labs in Manchester. So they get to call on me, and they can get an hour of my time here and there just to advise on things around marketing. So yeah,
Bro, how
that's
did
what I do.
you how did you wind up getting into that?
Network really. Network's everything. Somebody else that they'd spoken to, he was too busy, so they said speak to Simon, and possibly he could be the one. And it was just the right thing at the right time. From interest point of view, I needed to come out of the tunnel. Just have a look at a few of the things outside sort of the rigidity of what you do at PushON and work in a different way. It freshens me up. So I've seen some really interesting businesses through doing that.
Yeah,
It's good fun.
and I suppose you probably, it was like when you did that course, you naturally get clients off the back of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, there's been an element of that as well. There's even though we do a lot of digital, it's the old way still work really well. So we are humans after all. There's that emotional context about what you do, who you know, who you can actually bear the sight of. Do you feel that they're going to look after you in the way that you want to do? And it's different horses for different courses. Some people are quite emotional in what they're looking for. Some people are quite pragmatic, but you have to establish those human connections to have an element of certainty around it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you're quite an enigma in that. Is that you proudly call yourself, and this isn't me insulting you. You proudly call yourself a cunt. Um, but you're
Yeah.
also like one of the nicest guys ever in terms of you're very willing to share your time and your advice and your knowledge and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's quite a rare thing as well. So people would certainly gravitate towards you and appreciate that sort of stuff.
I'm
And
quite aware of that. Speak to Roy. He will tell you how annoying I can be. But I do think you have to put something of yourself into what you do, and also you spend, certainly when you're running your own business, as you will be very aware now, it's not 9 to 5, and you have to be able to live with yourself and be comfortable in your own skin when you're delivering your work and what you do. So there's a lot of old sayings that exist, and they exist for a purpose. So treat others as you would have yourself be treated, I think counts for something. So trying to be respectful to people, understand their wants and needs, be straightforward as you can be with them is is what you need to do, I guess. And I'm fairly comfortable that I behave in a reasonable way, and there's a lot of people that I know and I enjoy their company as well. There's people I do business with and I forget they're clients or business partners. They're just people I'll happily spend an evening with. I know, yeah, we do a bit of business as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess if we kind of go from the start, because we're going to kind of get to a wider point on like kind of the digital scene in the north. But I guess when you started, was there even a digital scene, or were you kind of like at the forefront of that with the agency?
There wasn't. There's a guy who's not necessarily acknowledged as much as he should be. There was clearly digital happening, but it wasn't the powerhouse that it is now, and there wasn't a huge amount in the way of infrastructure. The council really didn't understand digital at all, but there's a guy called Dave Carter who ran a small element of it's kind of a piece on the backside of the council, which he managed to find funding. He was great at sort of like getting a bit of money here and a bit of money there to actually support digital businesses. And they were the Manchester Digital Development Agency, and they had premises on Portland Street. Right. And they would do things like they had some good team in there, a guy called John Keys, Adrian Slatcher, who were sort of council employees, but they understood digital, and they would just help a little bit here and there. And with their offices, if you wanted to do something, you could borrow their offices to run a seminar doing something like this, but in person. And that gave you an opportunity. When me and Roy started, we didn't have offices for the first 2 years until we started really sort of like bringing staff on board and thought it'd be nice to have somewhere to sit. But that was really important to him, sort of like facilitating that, and just a little bit of a community where there would be people you could just learn a little bit from. Other agencies as well were quite critical. The now defunct Star.Star are really good. There's Jez and Gareth from there, were really smart cookies doing innovative work. They were great, and other businesses, loads of people you should mention. But and Manchester Digital, the trade body, Sean Fensom at Manchester Digital was really great, and he's still involved to some degree. But getting involved with the trade body, I spent some time on the council there, just being a pain, trying to break down. I think at the time it tended to be just a little bit slow from a public sector point of view, and there's a few people on the council who just kept prodding it and saying, you need to be a bit quicker, a bit more agile in the way you go about things. That's now run by Katie Gallagher, and it does really great work. They really are. I've got great reach and a lot of engagement and do a lot of campaigning for the sector. Peter Cobley was up here as well. He's still around and about. He was one of the director looking after Yahoo in the north, I think it was at the time. And he'd do a lot of facilitation. So there's a lot of people who are still about who collaborated, even though they were competitors. It was working together on the view that, and I tended to describe it as a cake. Even though you're competing for that slice of that cake, if you make it a really big cake, then you're all getting a nice bit of work out of it. So we did a lot. SaaScon was a good thing that we did. That was there's a guy called Richard Gregory who still does a lot around the sector as well. Does a lot of non-exec work these days. Him, me, and a few others. You've always got to mention Nikki Wake, who runs Don't Panic Project. Somebody who's been an absolute powerhouse in the sector, actually taking things from the north down to London, because the Londoners didn't have it. So she does, started off with UK Search Awards and things like that, and built a community around that. And we did SaaScon, which is Search Analytics and Social Conference, because there wasn't a great online marketing conference in the UK, and we grew it pretty big for quite a while, and had some great speakers on at that. Ralph, the Phantom Master, one of the early Black Hat SEOs, he was amazing. always, every time we had him on, he would say something absolutely controversial about Google. And we had early presence of Bruce Daisley, who's he's a director at Twitter now, does a great podcast and book called Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat. Got great people up here and just built a sector. We worked with the universities as well. MMU were really good. Salford Uni were pretty good as well. So we could bring students like your good self into the sector. So, Dave Edmondson, Bird, Brendan, talking to the industry, having a drink, saying, what are the skills that you want? Let's go and create courses. So it's a long-winded answer to a very short question. But a lot of that, yeah.
No, it's good. I'm just going to have to go back through and just tag everyone you mentioned. It's going to take forever.
Yeah, they're good people. It's worth the effort.
So, I mean, what was that? So obviously, like you say, when you started, it was kind of there, kind of wasn't. What was that conversation with you and Roy from just be like, fuck it, let's start an agency type of thing? I know it might not have been that simple of a conversation, but where did that start from?
We had a reasonably good business, which was reselling connectivity, dial-up connectivity. We'd worked in it previously, left that business, set up a reseller account, and it was great. So it was virtual ISP system type thing. So people would come to your branded website, shared technology platform at the background, and they could click a button and they could get email address, maybe a domain name, and your access to your 0845 dial-up number, and everyone was pretty much an 0845 at the time. So it was clear multiplier. They'd get a bit of web hosting space as well, but they had to be in your dial-up. So for each minute they were connected, you'd get a fraction of a penny, but you multiply that up by a good few thousand people using your service, and hello, I'd see Roy once every 2 weeks, but we just sat in our back bedrooms, pretty much like this, do some stuff, and we accidentally learned how to do SEO. We did a bit of buying of stuff as well, because we had so few costs. We had a look at other communities, if you will. So we bought a couple of those. There's one called 123, which was a free stuff site, and we persuaded the guy to sell it to us because he had thousands of visitors, and we made our money back in the first 2-3 months, what we paid for it. Cool. Just people signing up to the service, and we made an absolute fortune off it. But the problem there was that people were migrating to broadband, and that's a different thing. Certainly in those days, you needed to dispatch a router, which they then had to fit and then fail to fit it, so needing support on that, etc. And we just really didn't fancy it. 0845, no touch whatsoever, pretty much, and a shared tech support if they needed it, to having to send out routers, etc., with a cost associated with that, and you're probably 18 months, 2 years until you're making money on that. Different model, didn't fancy it. So we were, as usual, sort of in the pub saying, revenues are going to sort of like decrease on this. We've got to think about what we can do. And I believe they call it a pivot now. I thought, well, what do we know that we can do? Because I really don't fancy working for anyone else. I thought, well, we've kind of learned this thing called SEO. Could probably sell that to other people, and that was it. We set up an agency and learned how to sell it a bit, and stumbled through, and that was it really, just in the pub.
So was it literally just SEO at the beginning then?
SEO and PPC, right. Was it? I think, and the PPC worked really well, sort of like straight out of the box, because client side really didn't understand SEO at the outset, and it was a harder sell. Whereas with PPC, turn it on, there's some traffic, mate. We had one of our early clients was a dental spa out in at Alderley Edgway, and it's footballers' wives' territory. So we just did a constrained PPC campaign around that and owned everything. And they just stopped every other form of advertising within 3 months because so much traffic was coming in. It was the right product in the right physical locality. I thought, oh, that's good, and moved on from there.
Yeah, and then I guess the web dev kind of came. Was that a conscious decision in terms of let's get people in to then have the wider conversation on marketing support, or did that just naturally happen as you started to introduce things like Magento dev and that sort of stuff?
Initially, it was because developers were shit, and as an SEO, developers to this day, excuse me, I don't think like SEOs because they see them as a threat, whereas any good technical SEO largely wants a clean, fast, well-built, well-structured website, and developers couldn't do that, So we just got fed up of poor developers, and there might occasionally be an element of arrogance about developers, and it goes with the territory to some degree. So we thought, right, we'll get our own developer in, and he persuaded us to build our own content management system. So, oh, fair enough, we'll go and do that. And we had, 4 or 5 clients or something like that on it, and then he buggered off, and we were left with a CMS with no documentation, no way of making change to it, which was a bit of a pain. So we then just looked at open source systems, moved to WordPress, started actually actively selling development bits and pieces. As with any business, I think as well, another one of the drivers is when someone says, can you do this? You go, oh, we need to make some money. We can do that, which isn't necessarily a good thing to do in retrospect because you lose focus. But we built that up. So we moved over to WordPress, got some development capability in, and then eventually started to just really thinking about positioning. We decided we wanted to do e-commerce because we could see good money in it and we could see how it would fit together what else we were doing. So brought in something like 2009, 2010, Sam would know. We started doing Magento as it was the best platform around at the time. We thought we'd done Actinic was one we did use, and they really screwed up. They did. I mean, everyone used Actinic, but it was sort of like install on desktop kind of thing, and they didn't iterate, and they could have still be owning the market, and they absolutely blew it. So. So
were you guys? Were you quite an early adopter of Magento then?
Never thought of it that way, but I guess we must have been around that, yeah.
Because I mean, PushOn's known as obviously like kind of like this full service agency, but I think if you, I think kind of like you have that Magento edge certainly.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like you're obviously certified partners and stuff like that with Magento, and what was the other one that came? There was a couple of years ago. There was Magento, and there was another one that I've not heard anything about since.
What that we did?
It was. I'm not sure if PushOn ever did a build with them. I think some of their team came down for a few weeks.
Oh, Shopware.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, they still exist, but the demand didn't grow in the UK really, so it just didn't. I mean, they're huge in Germany. I think I was hearing the other day, Germany and Austria, in fact, they got something like 25% of the market. I think, could be wrong on that one, but it just didn't take off in the UK. So if someone's coming to us and saying, "Oh, I'd like you to build us a Magento website," you don't go, can I interest you in Shopware?
Yeah.
So it's a decent enough platform. Really, really nice people, I have to say. We went over to see them a few times, and great people, decent technology. But when you're agency, you have to have a demand to satisfy. People have to want it, and we just didn't really see any great demand in the UK for it.
Yeah, and I guess as well, you know how Magento works, and it slots in very nicely to. I think Magento kind of attracts the type of clients that you need, really. You probably, say one-off WooCommerce builds for $5,000, and then an ongoing SEO retainer of a couple of £100 just doesn't cut it.
No, but there's another market out there which is really interesting, because I do a fair amount of judging for various awards, biddable media awards, etc., which is really interesting. And on the panels, you get to meet some really smart people. I'm almost embarrassed that there's me gobshite, and then you've got people who are absolutely expert in what they do. But you also see some really great businesses, and Shopify, for instance, which I really don't think is as good as is that they're trying to make out it is. I mean, as an SEO, it's awkward to say the least. But in terms of functionality, there are some businesses which will have requirement for one storefront and not too wide a range of product. Shopify is fine for that. They don't need huge, complex systems, but they can shift a lot, and I've seen various things where they've grown and they're doing a good few million on Shopify because it fits within those constraints. And as an agency, we're certainly interested in those. We sell marketing capability, so being able to support something where they might want to grow to generating a few million of a narrow field is a place that we're interested in. So we don't dismiss Shopify, and we'll certainly build on it, but it's not something that necessarily fits into the complexity of scale that we look at around B2B, direct to consumer, multiple storefronts, multiple territories. Magento's the player in that one at the moment.
Yeah. So have you for example, for like me, like with the whole, run of remote agencies, kind of how I brand it, it's just the reality is I'm too tight to pay for an office space. So, I get a bulk of kind of dispenses work from White Label, which works really well for the setup that I have and kind of unconsciously kind of branched out into it. So are there any kind of areas that PushON are looking at the minute that you're looking to drive forward, or are you looking to just grow the current channels as they are?
Mainly keeping our focus at the moment. I don't like using the term full service because there's things that we don't do and probably won't do. A lot of full service agencies I've seen tend to be mediocre service. I like us to be good, so we've got great SEOs, great paid social, great PPC, great developers, great analytics. That's what we do. So we pitch out as e-commerce, and the market for that is huge still. Certainly B2B as well. We find that there's still a lot of B2B business that isn't doing things as well as they really could be, and there's market opportunity. Certainly we're seeing a lot of opportunity through this lockdown at the moment. If you think about the nature of the high street, for instance, if you're a manufacturer or an importer and the high street places that you're dealing with don't exist or have changed, how are you going to sell? You look at the toy market, for instance. You've got a lot of things there disappeared on the high street. You had Toys R Us is gone. You've got the department stores as well. How are you going to sell toys? You've got to have a direct-to-consumer model. You're competing against Amazon, and Amazon have annoyed a lot of people recently by some of their behaviours and so forth. So it's become apparent, and I have a bugbear as well. I think a lot of business still does not, at board level or senior level, they do not have digital expertise. It's a thing over there. Somebody else will look after it. Whereas, as has become apparent in this lockdown, even for the smallest of business, you've got to have a digital presence. You've got to understand how it's working. You've got to measure what it's doing, how you're spending your budget on advertising. And that knowledge needs to exist at a senior level. So we'll certainly be going down looking at B2B, obviously still keep doing B2C as well, and direct to consumer. But those businesses who might want multiple fronts because how they get their products sold has changed quite a lot. And that's a fascinating space. I think this whole lockdown process is condensing 3-5 years of creation of need into a matter of a few months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you
Uh,
said, they're forced to look to kind of, they've got no other option but to look into it, have they? And I would imagine you have people now getting in touch that you might have had initial conversations with a couple of years ago going, shit, Simon, we should have listened to you from those
There's
first
certainly
ones.
elements of that, and other bits and pieces that are coming along. We've just been working with a really good business called Dunster's Farm, who wholesale food delivery. So they deliver to wholesale stuff, big packs to schools, etc. All of a sudden, that market wiped out, and they were really quick off the mark. I'd had a conversation with them previously, and they'd immediately on their website, just a WordPress website, really nicely done as well, in fact. And they just put a phone number up and a PDF of here's our products, ring up and order some stuff, and we can get it delivered to you. Spoke to them, did a bit of work with them. Their incumbent agency was quite capable of doing it. Plugged in WooCommerce, took it so that people then can make orders online rather than somebody on the end of the phone going, like that. There's your order. That's everything done out there. It comes into the system. They've clearly got to build systems. Won't support them over 3 to 5 years, but right now it's a quick minimum viable product, if you like, of we are trading online. We have revenue coming through this business. We can survive and grow this.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. They moved really quickly and they were very open. Really good management team there.
Cool. So I'm just going through my list of. I'm just trying to like pick out some unique questions because we've covered a fair bit of stuff. So we've gone through that. So yeah, this is a good one. So like I said about someone like me or in the freelance position, just starting to go a bit stir crazy, being stuck in. So maybe get an office once this is all over. But what's your advice for someone either freelance looking to scale or maybe a small agency looking to scale to something a similar size as PushON?
This whole thing gives you some thinking to do. You can absolutely run something as you are doing. One thing that we noted when we'd already had offices, we were moving to our offices in Timber Wharf, and going back to this human connection point, we had two, which were at the time huge deals for us, biggest deals we'd ever done, which were, 50-50 we thought. We moved into these new offices, which looked right, and both deals converted in that week. There's an element of perception, depending on what your market is. If you're doing white label, then most people you're dealing with just care about your skill set. So that's fine. There's an element of clients, certainly maybe not overtly, but at the back of the mind, they want to feel the quality of the cloth, want to be able to sit down with you in some place.
Yeah.
And there's also an element of, again, this thing I've been doing WeWork Labs, just getting out of the constraints of where I exist normally, to be able to go and speak to other businesses. We've done some out of office things with the rest of the team over at WeWork, and being able to sit with people in a different environment and bounce ideas of other people was really valuable. So there's something to be said for the access to information and knowledge and human networks, even though you can do it digitally, but be able to sit with a cup of tea with someone going, how's it going, mate? What about this? You just get into things a little bit more. I mean, we've arranged this call, but this call was arranged rather than the walking, like I used to go past your desk and annoy you, something like have a natter about, have you listened to any bolt thrower, for instance, conversations, those human interactions I think are really important. And this whole process of everyone using Zoom now has done something to make change in expectation, but there is something to be said by being able to sit close to people and natter.
Yeah, and I think as well, it comes back to that wider thing of, you mentioned about kind of everyone gets a slice of the cake. I think, like I said, but back to kissing your ass on, like, you're the kind of person who, you share a lot of knowledge and all that sort of stuff. But, it's certainly you get that back as well. You know,
Mhm.
someone's much more likely to, even if it's just a case someone's looking for, SEO agency or Magento or whatever. Oh, Simon's a nice guy, and I think a lot of it does come down to that. Is that if you just, you always said about PushON, like it's nice people doing good work, and it's true because you could be the best at what you do, but if you're an absolute twat, no one's going to want to work with you.
There are cases around Manchester which I won't mention, but there's other good people as well. And again, I mentioned them. The whole Manc SEO thing, which was sparked up again, necessarily so, because there's nothing happening for a while, which is a real shame because this economy and digital economy in Manchester grew by collaborative efforts. Like Pete Young, Ben Mackay, Rob Weatherhead, and all sorts of people like that helping out. And you've got Kieran Hughes and Will O'Hara. I think there's a few others involved in it, set up the Manc SEO thing. That's doing really good things. People are travelling to that. They're selling out in every event that they do. But that builds the community and builds the knowledge sharing piece, and then they'll be passing bits and pieces of work out here and there as well. So it's a really good thing to do, and people do remember you for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So as well, in terms of, like you said, with what's happened and everyone's kind of being forced to reevaluate what they're doing. You mentioned about Amazon kind of pissing a lot of people off. I'm certainly in that boat. Been focusing on affiliates for probably, easily the last 12 months quite seriously, and it's been going quite well. Not so much anymore, but there's different ways to approach it. I'm going to be launching like a course on complete blogging for beginners and include SEO and content and doing it all properly. So that's forced me to think about things in another way. So I guess, have you gone through a similar thought process, either personally or for PushON? Like if consultancy was something that you'd offer personally, or kind of joint services for PushON to kind of bring to the forefront off the back of this?
If you're not constantly evaluating what you do and how you do it in a business, you're not going to grow, or you're not going to grow as well as you should do. So one of the things with what I do is we were going into businesses and they had ambition but not the skills, and I still think there is a problem with the skills in businesses, even with an amount of in-housing that goes on at the moment. So that's why I did a lot of work around strategic approach and planning. With the best will in the world, you're seeing some businesses who had budget, had product, had service, with no clue about how to deploy that. So we saw an opportunity to be able to go into businesses and help them from the outset to get in early and say, well, let's have a think about who your customers are. How do these customers operate? What the persona development, etc. And what channels do they use? And then how can you actually deliver service to them? What do you have in place right now? Can you plug it all together? So that consultative approach to help them build a better business, because I've seen so many businesses where it's like when you even without explicitly going to learn some stuff, you see enough businesses and you think that's really good. That's not going to work very well at all. So being able to take that into to other business and say, let us help you. You can bill for it as well. If you're delivering clients services that help them grow and get them a return on investment, we work on the theory they'll be happy to pay your bills. So we see quite an opportunity around this with being able to get in early and help people transition. Though I do have to say, anytime, and you know this as well as I do, anyone on LinkedIn or mailing you who uses the term ninja, guru, no.
Blocked.
Even if they know what they're doing, they don't have sufficient dignity to be worthy of your time.
Or also someone looking for a rock star freelancer usually means I'm going to pay you £2 an hour.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Yeah.
Cool. So probably just a final one on this one, really. So knowing what you know now from growing PushON and kind of the wider e-commerce offering, if you had to start PushON again tomorrow, would you go about the same approach, or would you kind of go for more something really, really specialist, or like an immediate e-commerce package, for example?
If I had my time again, I wouldn't be an agency. I would just say, what can we sell, and own that space.
Yeah.
So just go out. I mean, that's as an agency, you make your money as a multiplier largely of the resource you have. You know, if you can get 3-to-1 on costs, you're doing all right there. You know. And then you have to stick bums on seats. Whereas if you're doing something, I sell this product or range of products, and you can own that space. Again, I remember I back in '94 was working at a place, and I saw this internet thing. I thought, I cannot see this failing. And I spoke to them and said, look, I will learn how to build websites. You just fund this bit. And they said, no, it's only ever going to be for porn. It was a large part for porn.
Well, they're technically wrong, but
yeah. So if you imagine, I'd sort of got a domain, then built authority around that, and not got too spammy. Can you imagine the market share?
Yeah, SEO.com or something.
Yeah. So I'd have found product to sell. I've got a range of products, and then go, there you go, mate. That'd have been serious money. If you're wanting to move into, if you're talking about moving into being an agency, probably being a bit better at hiring and firing. There's, again, an old adage, hire slowly, fire quickly. We've had some really, really great people who've worked for us. I think we've got a reputation as being a good place to be, but there's been occasions where it's been the wrong fit, and we've perhaps persisted too long, and that's damaged the business or held the business back. There's, even though we are digital, there is still good business practice. So I would have probably built a better sales arm earlier. We've really grown as a business since we've had Steve on board. He's a great sales guy, really sells in the right way. So just a little bit more thoughtful on team, more thoughtful and focused on sales, I think, is where you've got to be.
Yeah. And I guess as well, being in that thought leadership position as well, you know, keeping being actively involved in the community, I think speaks volumes as well, rather than just, you know, there's what I like to call business SEOs rather than kind of those involved SEOs where they might rank for like agency terms and things like that, but no one knows who they are, you know, they're not actively involved in the community. So it's just one of them. I guess if you want to land the clients that are actually going to make a difference for you and you're going to be able to build a team around them, then you need to know what you're doing. Basically, you can't just chuck a subscription to SEMrush and buy a few links every month and hope for the best. So
yeah, good team is crucial as well. You know, one of the great things we did in the business was, you know, Sam started off as an SEO exec. Then we realised he was a really talented developer, so we stopped him doing SEO. He didn't want to stop doing SEO. Made him build websites. Progressed him through the company till he was running the web team. Now he's managing director. You know, finding great talent like that and progressing them is one of the things you could do. We should have done a bit more of that, I think.
Yeah. Bro, I think that's everything.
Cool. All good.